sake of time, I'm just gonna go ahead and just get started then, because this is the last session for this year for 2021. So again, welcome everybody. My name is Horace, event host here at Horseations, where we talk about all things cocktails and mixology. So again, you could have found any this information online, but you chose to join these sessions for your next half hour. So I really appreciate your time, and welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to explore many topics of the cocktail mixology bartending world. A drink or drinks will actually be mixed and conversations to be had. Feel free to interrupt me at any time in the chat and put in your questions or comments. I'll go ahead and try to answer it to the best of my ability. Disclaimer, I only bar back for a little bit during my time before the pandemic. And so because of that, I wouldn't consider myself a pro at all. I just like to research a lot of things about the mixology and share the knowledge to the world. So again, just some list of things. So before we get into the first cocktail, this is the last free course of this year. Thank you everybody for joining. I'm going to put a pause on this for the beginning of 2022, just because I'm going to reevaluate, maybe send out a survey to see where things are and what people want to see, what people have feedback on before considering revamping the courses again for 2022. So I really thank you everybody that are joined for the past any of the sessions this past year. It was really great to have you guys and join in on all your conversations, and really I learned a lot as well too, so I am very grateful. So you can find again all these videos on my YouTube channel if you want to look back in past sessions, and feel free to follow me on Instagram as well at Horseations, HORSEATIONS, for more creative cocktail adventures. So before I get into the first cocktail, of course, it's Christmas time, the holidays, it's getting cold, the weather. You wanted something warm, right? But let's go over the four components of a cocktail. Back in the day when cocktails first were invented, they categorized them having four components. So of course you have the spirit, which is the liquor of choice. You have the sweetener. You have some sort of bitters, because bitters back in the day was something to cure some things like headache, stomach pains, any sort of like, you just drank bitters just because you felt bad. So this was like a cure for it. Last but not least, the main thing that people always forget is water. Water is actually very important in cocktails because it dilutes, it makes the spirit a little bit more palpable, and it also hydrates your system. If you buy a bottle of alcohol and it says 43% ABV, 57% of that is water. So you're actually drinking mostly water. You're not drinking the spirit. So water comes in the form of many. So of course, most cocktails, it's ice. So ice causes dilution. But in the case of a toddy, it comes in the form of hot water because it's a warm cocktail. So let's just go ahead and start with the basic hot toddy. It's a very, very simple recipe. Feel free to enjoy it at any time. If you have the ingredients that are sent out in the email list, feel free to gather them now if you have them prepared, and just follow along. So all you need really is a mug, maybe a spoon to mix things, but you really don't need any like fancy cocktail mixers or any of that sort. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my tabletop. So here I have a clear glass mug for our hot toddy, just so that you can see the color of the whiskey. And the one thing about hot drinks, you want to always pre-warm your mug. So whatever container you're using. So I'm using a hot water dispenser. So all I did was just pour some hot water. You can see it's steaming hot, and you're just pre-warming your mug. So when you pour your cocktail in there, your warm cocktail, it's not gonna cause it to, like, the temperature to drop significantly. And so I'm gonna go ahead and do that, warm it up for a little bit, and then just dump it right out. That's pretty much it. Dump the water. So I can feel the mug, it's pretty warm now. I just boiled the water, so it's pretty hot. So first things first, you want to take a fresh lemon. So I have a fresh lemon here. You just no need to really measure it, because what happens with a hot toddy is that it changes the perception of the taste of many ingredients, including lemon. So you can imagine, like, you're thinking, oh, if I added a lot of lemon juice into my hot toddy, it's gonna be super sour. Not really. You notice that when you add lemon in your hot tea, like hot lemon tea, it's actually really soothing. And that's what hot water does to a cocktail. So all I'm doing right now is just squeezing a single wedge of lemon juice. I like mine actually with a little bit more juice. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get rid of the seed right there. Ooh, I don't want that. And just squeeze another wedge. And then afterwards, we're gonna go ahead and add some honey syrup. So you can use any sweetener of choice. You can use simple syrup, which is 1 part sugar to 1 part water. But I like to use honey, just because honey, it's just my preference, that's it. I have no really explanation there. But with a honey syrup, what you wanna do is actually add 3 parts honey to 1 part water, just because the honey itself already has some water. So if you do 1 part honey, 1 part water, it's gonna be too dilute. So you don't want that. So I'm only gonna add like a little bit, like maybe a 1/4 ounce straight into the mug. I would say the main ingredient, star of the show, is our bourbon or whiskey of choice. Feel free to grab your favorite bottle of whiskey. I'm using Elijah Craig small batch bourbon, affordable but very good bourbon whiskey. Get that pop, and we're just gonna go ahead and add straight 1 ounce. There we go. Go ahead and double the ingredients or the amount, because my mug is actually small. So if you're using a larger container, just double up the ingredients, or not double up the ingredients, my bad. Double up the amount that I'm adding. And then afterwards, I'm just gonna go ahead and add my Angostura bitters. So you've probably seen these oversized labeled bottles somewhere in your grocery store or liquor store. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about this a little bit in detail after the first cocktail, but it feels ridiculous. So I went ahead and just aliquoted it into my own little dropper bottle. We only just need a dash. I just don't want to carry a giant bottle and dash it in there. That just, sometimes it just goes all over the place, and that's not a good, I don't want to waste no good bitters, right? You need to add hot water, and what do? Just top it up. So I'm just gonna go ahead and top it up with hot water. There we go. So you see the steam coming out, and then we're gonna go ahead and garnish it, because with cocktails, you taste with your eyes first. So what I'm gonna do is cut a slice of lemon. And one cool thing that you can do with lemon, you could just garnish it just like that. But what I like to do is actually poke a few holes. If you have a toothpick, cocktail pick, you go ahead and poke a few holes outside on the skin. And then if you have some cloves on hand, I like to use fresh cloves, because it gives off a nice kind of like holiday scent aroma. You kind of like stab it. Just like that. And so with the garnish, so a lot of your sense of taste actually comes from your nose, that sense of smell. So these cloves help to attract or like give off a more enticing aroma. So I gotta cut it right here. Garnish it. There we go. It's a little big for this like small mug. Looks a little ridiculous, but this is your typical, oh, sorry, I'm not getting a focus here. This is your typical hot toddy. Very, very simple recipe, just requires the 4 components of a cocktail, hot water, and that's it. Going to garnish my spiked apple cider with a slice of apple and that clove tip. Wow, that is a great garnish. I would say that's actually a preview to the next one I'm gonna make. It's involves apple brandy. So like instead of bourbon or whiskey, you can use brandy as a replacement for the spirit. And then you can use, instead of hot water, use hot cider. So thank you for sharing that. That's actually great info. You may realize that hot toddy, the mug, I filled it with half the mug was filled with just hot water. So I was like, well, why am I over diluting my spirit? You're thinking like, I'm just gonna be drinking liquefied spirit, like diluted spirit. It's not gonna taste good. Well, actually it's different, because hot water does something different to cocktails. Because if you do a cold cocktail, the temperature on your tongue perceives it differently than if you drank a hot cocktail. Because what happens with a hot cocktail, hot water changes that perception of alcohol. Because remember, alcohol evaporates much faster than water. And so when you pour in hot water to the alcohol, well, it's not like constantly all the alcohol is gone. You get some alcohol instantly evaporates, and then it causes a lot of aromas that rise up before that first sip. And so that's really important for your sense of taste, because again, 80% of your sense of taste, about 80%, comes from your nose. Someone said that like they like to make their drinks go with rum. A lot of rum can work too, actually, because rum, again, rum, whiskey, brandy, they're all matured in casks, or my bad, barrels. So what they call it, some people call it casks, some people call it barrels, but they're all matured in barrels. And so a lot of those wood notes, a lot of those warm spice, vanilla notes that come from the barrels, actually, they all resonate with each other. So you can actually mix and match and see what you like. So for everyone here, you don't have to use whiskey for a hot toddy. You can choose to use rum. You can choose to use whiskey. You can choose to use brandy. You can use an añejo tequila if that's what you prefer as well. But I would actually advise against using the brighter spirits, such as using Blanco tequila, where it's very bright, peppery. That might not go well with a hot toddy, or like a vodka. I mean, at that point, you're just kind of like, well, you're kind of mixing it with like a ginger meal in a sense. So that's just my preference, but feel free to mix and match. Everyone's palate is different. There's no right or wrong answer. That's what I have to say. It's just try things out, see what you like, and go from there. So thank you for sharing that. Rum works really well. As I was mentioning, so the aromas rise up, and from the steam, you just perceive that the alcohol, the sense of all the aromas, all the botanicals, whatever taste was in the whiskey instantly hits your nose and then your palate. And so that's, hot water is very interesting in cocktails. And so there's another one that I went over in my 9th class back in September, which is the flip cocktail, where they actually used to use hot poker. I don't know how sterile it was back in the day, but they actually jammed that thing into their cocktail. And what it did, it would froth up the drinks. It would instantly heat it up, because you're talking a hot poker, metal poker heated with charcoal. That's burning hot. So it'll froth up and it'll caramelize the drink, and it'll caramelize the sugars in there. And so what you get is just a really, really great, like frothy, sweet goodness. I don't know how to describe it. Also, lemon at high heat, it becomes a soothing sensation, right? And so it's not really sour. So imagine like hot honey lemon tea, as I mentioned, when you're sick, you're sick with the flu or the cold, you drink that hot lemon tea, it really soothes your sinuses, your throat, and it feels really good. And so before I get into the apple side of things, let's talk a little bit, as mentioned before, about Angostura bitters. Now, this very popular oversized label, there's a funny story behind this. Some people say that it was originally, the label was printed and it was supposed to be for a certain bottle, but the models got mixed up, and for some reason they just got a ton of labels. They didn't want to waste it. They just went ahead and did the label. But actually, who knows? But this is a very, I guess this is an iconic symbol of Angostura bitters, that oversized label. You'll just see it everywhere in stores. And so let's talk a little bbit about Angostura bitters, because bitter is actually a very important component in cocktails. It's like your salt, your spice, your pepper rack, and you want to use it. It's like a flavoring agent to your cocktails. But before it was a flavoring agent to cocktails, what it was actually medicine. It was actually considered medicine. It was alcohol infused with a ton of herbs and botanicals, and people used it as medicine. So if you think like Eastern medicine, it's the same idea, where they use a lot of these herbs, dried herbs, they macerate them, they infuse it with alcohol, and then you go ahead and have a sip and you feel a lot better. Well, supposedly. Some work, but I'm not a doctor in that sense, so I'm not gonna go ahead and say anything about bitters there. But let's talk a little bit about Angostura bitters. So a guy named Johann Benjamin Siegert, who is a German doctor, he studied medicine in Berlin. And so he used his medical knowledge, and he used it to gather different types of herbs, roots, botanicals, tree bark. Ironically, no Angostura tree bark was used in his bitters, even though it's called Angostura or aromatic bitters. We'll get to that a little later. But in 1824, that's when he created his own Siegert's Amargo Aromatico bitters. And he operated out of the town of Angostura. Right now it's called Ciudad Bolivar in Venezuela. It means the Narrows. And of course, it started having very busy ports and very busy trade, ships coming in and out. And so with that, his bitters sold to sailors. And this helped sailors with what's a really, number one sickness out there is seasickness. And so it actually helped combat seasickness for these sailors. And they bought a lot of it, and business was booming. And in 1850, the doctor decided, you know what, I'm just going to retire from being a doctor, and I'm just going to focus on my bitters business. And that's exactly what he did. Eventually, his two sons took over upon his death in 1870, and the family moved from his business from Venezuela to Trinidad. And so right now, the original formula, it still remains a company secret. It's apparently known to only about 5 people in the world. But it is this lovely bottle. You can see I love it so much. I have a huge bottle right here. It is a staple to many classic cocktails, as you probably know, such as the Old Fashioned, the Manhattan, and the Champagne cocktail. And if you actually notice too, fun fact, the Hot Toddy is pretty much the same template as the Old Fashioned. You just have a hot Old Fashioned in a sense with 2 ounces of water, or like double the amount of water compared to a cold Old Fashioned you have on the rocks. And so if you want more information on the Old Fashioned, I did a in the very beginning of these sessions, my first course, I went over the Old Fashioned. So you can check that out on YouTube. And so as mentioned before, many other spirits work well, depends on your palate. So another spirit that works well, of course, is rum, as mentioned, but another one is brandy. You've probably heard before, brandy, people have their snifter, they're like holding it between their fingers, the palm of their hand. With the palm of their hand holding it, it really warms that cocktail up, or not cocktail, warms the brandy up. And so with that, you can drink brandy at room temperature. You don't need it to put in a cold cocktail, put ice in it. It's up to you. But we're gonna go ahead and make the next cocktail now. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen once again. We're gonna be using our Calvados right here, VSOP. I did go over brandy overall in my last month's session on apple brandy itself. But Calvados is distilled from apples. In France, and this is called Calvados. If you don't remember, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's in the region of Calvados, or if they just, I'm pretty sure, because with Champagne, it's the Champagne region. With Cognac, it's in the Cognac region. So I'm pretty sure French do have their pride in where they distill and where the things come from. And so I believe that's the case. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But you can opt for Laird's Apple Brandy too if you want to go for something American. Laird's, I went over last session. They still own the first distiller's license here in USA. They've been distilling since way back in the day. And so if you love apples a lot, 50% bottle and bond, this was a great bottle to pick up. But I'm gonna go ahead and use my Calvados today for my next toddy. So I'm gonna set this to the side. I'm gonna grab another mug and pre-warm this with some hot water. Another fun thing I like to do is infuse certain things into spirits. And so what I did actually was infuse my Calvados here in a mason jar with chamomile tea. I just used chamomile tea bags and just put it in there for 24 hours and then took out the tea bags, and there you go. You have chamomile infused Calvados. Why did I do that? Well, I just thought chamomile tea is very soothing. So hot tea, soothing, hot toddy. I think it kind of works. Worked for my palate. Maybe it'll work for yours as well. So give it a try if you want. With a apple toddy, instead of honey syrup, what I'm gonna use is maple syrup, because as you probably know, maple syrup and apples go super well together. So we're gonna go ahead and add that in. Again, I'm only adding a small amount just because hot water changes the perception of the taste. So I don't want to add too much because it's going to be too sweet. We're going to go ahead and cut our lemon. And I'm just going to use, let's get rid of the seeds here. And I'm just going to go ahead and use 1 wedge, squeeze that in. We add our spirit. So I'm going to go ahead and just use 1 ounce, of my chamomile infused Calvados. So there's going to be a ton of appley goodness in this hot toddy. We're going to add our Angostura bitter. So I'm just going to go ahead and add 1 dash there. And then we're going to go ahead and just add our hot water. And there we go. We are not done. As you may have guessed or probably predicted, we need a garnish. So I'm going to go ahead and use an apple right here, a fresh little apple. If you did attend last month's session on apple brandy, I created an apple fan. So I'm gonna go ahead and move my cutting board a little bit here just so you can see what I do. So what you want to do is you kind of get gauge depending on how big your mug is. And all you do is you just kind of cut half off, and you just cut several slices lengthwise. And then you take your cocktail pick, you kind of stab it along a quarter way through, just kind of stab it through, and then you fan it out. And here you have an apple fan garnish. So I made mine's, so it's a little big. Of course, my little glass mugs are smaller than a standard mug, and so it kind of looks ridiculous, but if in a regular mug, I'm sure it looks great. So there you go. This is a garnish for Calvados because it's made of apple, so I think this is the appropriate garnish for it instead of a lemon. Very soothing for the holidays. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch back. It's like, oh yeah, thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah, very easy garnish to make, and it's edible too. All right, so that's pretty much it. There's 2 cocktails, great cocktails, easy cocktails too for the holidays. Feel free to use it for your family and friends or your next gathering. Of course, please be safe as the pandemic is still going on. And once that, we're just gonna close off 2021 with this last session. I'm gonna stay here for the next 3 minutes or so to answer any questions or comments you have. Once again, my name is Horace, here event host at Horseations, and this is going to be the last course of 2021. I'm gonna put a pause. Next, as mentioned earlier, next year, I'm going to go ahead and send out a survey and then potentially revamp it up again sometime next year, depending on the feedback. You can find all the recordings on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. Feel free to check it out if you want to take a look at what was covered in the last sessions. Once again, these sessions are meant to just share my love for mixology and cocktails in the bartending world with everybody, and hope you learn something. And I'm open always, all the time, and feel free to chime in because I would like to learn new things as well too. Of course, I love garnishes. Yes, I'm glad you like the garnishes. They're simple, but like those little simple things you taste with your eyes first, then your nose, and then your tongue. So someone asking, how does bitter enhance the flavor? So bitters has tons of herbs and aromatics in it. So there's different brands of bitters everywhere. So you want to look into which type of bitters you want and which brand you just kind of like taste around. But how it enhances is like, for example, if a whiskey, it's like your spice. It's like a bartender's spice. If you go to a bar and you ask a bartender, it's like their spice rack. So they just take their choice of bitters, what can really what they think will make the drink, because it adds like more flavor to it. If you ever taste an old fashioned without Angostura bitters, trust me, you only taste just like bourbon, whiskey. It doesn't feel like there's no like other flavors in there, because a lot of time when you drink it, a lot of the bitters, all that flavoring and the herbs and everything comes out at the end. For me at least, that's how I describe it, the end of your palate. Once I swallow drink, I feel the bitters, I taste the bitters and all those herbs and aromatics. Now, I don't really know the science behind how the bitters enhances the flavor, but if you do ask any craft bartender out there, they will have bitters on hand at any time, because you add just 1 drop, 2 drops, because it's heavily concentrated with herbs. It really brings up the drink. So I just want to show a couple of bitter bottles. So I have Angostura here, you saw that right here. I actually have another aromatic bitters by Scrappy's Bitters. So I went ahead and got this one just to try this type of aromatic bitters. And then I also got Fee Brothers. They make a lot of bitters as well. This is a whiskey barrel aged bitter. So they went ahead and made the bitters, and then they put it into a barrel to age it. So it has barrel notes. So this, I would say, would pair well because of the barrel notes. It would pair really well with an old fashioned or even a Manhattan, anything with whiskey. So maybe try this out for your hot toddy. Or even the Bitter Truth also makes their own aromatic bitters as well. So I hope that answers your question. I don't really know the science behind how it enhances, but craft bartenders, they can't go without their bitters. And there's many different types. There's like peach bitters, there's jalapeno bitters, there's a whole bunch of bitters. I just can't recall on the top of my head right now. Orange bitters, that's another popular one. citrus flavors. Anything cocktails with citrus, orange bitters can pair pretty well. Cranberry bitters. Yeah, there's quite a lot. I've seen eucalyptus as well. So there's a far reach, but you can go anywhere with those bitters. Yeah, hope that answers your question. Well, it is 12:30, so let's close off this year with a cheers. Cheers to a long, healthy, prosperous year of 2021, and we're gonna welcome 2022. Hope things get better, the bars open up completely, and the pandemic is gone. Let's just wish for that. Cheers, everybody. So once again, you can find all my recordings on YouTube and look out for the survey. Thank you so much for joining again. My name is Horace. You could have chosen anybody else to spend your half hour with and find information elsewhere, but you chose to spend this half hour with me. So I really, really greatly appreciate you guys and hope to see you next year when I revamp these sessions. So once again, thank you very much, and see you next time. Have a great holidays, everyone. Stay warm, stay safe, and stay happy. All right, I'll see you next time. Cheers.